Welcome everybody. So tonight we're still in Netilat Yadayim, but thank God there's a lot of halachas to discuss about Netilat Yadayim. I didn't realize it was so long in the Mishnah Berurah that there was so much. It's something that we do every single day, um, and thank God there's a lot to talk about. So this will be the game plan for tonight. First, we're gonna talk about washing your hands in the bathroom, which is something that you know I think that's something sometimes we have to do it right if there's no other water. So talk about that, and then we'll talk about this thing called hagbah. The Gemara mentioned that we saw it in Daf Yomi, forget which Masechta, but raising your hands up after washing your hands. Why would someone do that? And that's going to lead us to a discussion, which we're going to talk about why it is exactly that we're washing, why we wash our hands the way we wash our hands. One, two, one like this, one like that. Okay, so there's a lot to discuss over there. How many times exactly to wash your hands? Um, and then basically some halachos that that come as a result of that. Once we have this discussion, we're going to have these interesting cases that that we're going to see as are a result of that discussion, and then we're going to finish, if we have time, that we're going to circle back to bandages, right? We were talking about bandages last week. I think we actually were left with a question: what if you have a bandage over your entire hand? So it actually came up again in this week for a different reason. But once it came up again, so then they discussed the question that we left off with. So we'll finish with that. But let's start with quick. This is a quick halacha. Doesn't really relate much to shear. To the rest of the shear. This is a kind of its own topic about washing your hands in the bathroom. The the reason why it's even mentioned in this part is because we're in Kuf Samach Beis in the Mishnah. If anyone wants to follow along, um, Kuf Samach Beis. I think in English that's 162. I think. So 162 because it starts to talk about Tuma and Tahara, this idea of being pure. So I think they needed a place to mention this discussion. So, the deer shoes, the contemporary issues. So they need a place to put it in. That's what I think. So they put it in right as like an introduction almost, put it as like an introduction to our topic for the rest of the night. They say, what is the halacha? Are you allowed to wash your hands in the bathroom? So first they quote, so what would be the problem with washing your hands in the bathroom? So there's two problems. Um, Number one, it's what about making the bracha, right? Maybe if you wash your hands, you can't, you definitely can't make the bracha in the bathroom, right? You're not allowed to think about Torah in the bathroom. You for sure can't say a bracha in the bathroom. So, so that could be one problem. But the other problem is that it could be that you're in a plate that there's this idea about being pure, and if you're in a place that's not pure, then maybe that's going to make your hands not able to get pure. So this is a halacha that I wasn't aware of till I saw it now. But they quote from Rav Shlomo Zalman, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and the Minchas Yitzchak that it would be okay for you to wash your hands in the bathroom. That's no problem, but you should make sure that you should leave the bathroom to say the bracha, right? Which is, I think, what most people intuitively would do. They would wash their hands in the bathroom. They say that, but they say that's only if it's really better to not wash your hands in the bathroom. Um, but if you have to, you can wash your hands in the bathroom and then dry and then make the bracha and then dry your hands outside the bathroom. That's one school of thought. The other school of thought is the Chazon Ish and Rav Moshe, um, who very strongly say no. Washing your hands in the bathroom is no good, even if you were to make your bracha, even if you were to make the bracha outside the bathroom. So it's just something to be aware about. And why do they hold like that? They hold like that because they say that, right, the whole point, the whole reason we're washing our hands is this idea of purifying your hands. So if you're in a place where it's not pure, you're in the bathroom, then it's not going to work to purify your hands, to clean your hands, right, to make it tar in a place where it's not tar. So the whole thing wouldn't even work. And in fact, Rav Moshe is such a strong opinion about this that he would say that let's say you washed your hands. Let's say you washed your hands, not in the bathroom, and then you walked into the bathroom for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe you weren't thinking. You walked into the bathroom. So he says you need to wash your hands again, right? You need to wash your hands again. It wouldn't work. That's of course if you didn't make the bracha. If you did make the bracha already, then I think in the middle of the meal, then you wouldn't need to wash your hands again. But if you washed your hands and then let's say you went to the bathroom to get the towel, to get a paper towel or something to make the bracha. So because you entered a place that wasn't tar, your hands are now tummy. You need to wash from the beginning. So that's the halacha about a bathroom. If you have a question, but you could just unmute yourself.
Yeah, yeah. Is he talking about where there's something in the toilet, so therefore the bathroom is really a place where there's
They it
something unclean, or it's just a bathroom like a room which has a toilet in it, but there's nothing there?
they didn't distinguish in over here. They didn't distinguish, but they did say this is something that we should have mentioned that they did distinguish if there was like a curtain in between, right? If there's like a curtain or stuff that's kind of blocking you, so you're not really near a toilet so much, or if there's different sections in the bathroom. So then some people even permit to say the bracha there, but they didn't even say they didn't even dis they didn't say there's anything specifically in a toilet that it would be dirty, but they did say um in the shower no problem. Shower is okay.
Because some people say is that our bathrooms are not the law of a bathroom anymore
Unless
because
there's
there
oh unless it's empty. I mean,
yeah,
unless it's not,
if it's
yeah,
empty.
right.
Some they say in the name of Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik, Schechter, that he said he would put even his tefillin on top of the toilet.
Oh wow. Okay, so that would be a
And
big deal. That would help out a lot. That would certainly help out a lot. Okay, so we'll have to go back on that, but I guess it's something to discuss to just be aware of um when it comes to bathrooms. Okay, so now we'll get to the main part of the shir tonight, which is this idea about hagbah. Hagbah means raising your hands. So this could be a little complicated, so we'll go through it very slowly. We'll do our best to make it very clear that and the Mishnah Berurah spends a lot of time trying to explain the halacha that the Shulchan Aruch quotes. That the Shulchan Aruch quotes, when you wash your hands, you're supposed to raise up your hands. What does it mean to raise up your hands? He says to raise it up like this, right? Not just like pick it up. It's to raise it up like this so that the water on your hands is going to fall off this way. So why would he say for you to do that? So he says that when you wash your hands, this is actually the process that the first water that you pour over your hands, right? The idea is that we're trying to, even though our hands, right, even though we don't actually have tumat and tahara, um, on a on a um, biblical level, we're still trying to replicate it on a rabbinical level. So therefore, we have to, the halachas are very specific on a biblical level. And since we're trying to replicate it exactly on a rabbinical level, it has to be very, very exact. So the first pour that we do over our hands gets rid of the impurity, right? The tame that we have on our actual hands. I mean, our hands before we wash them, they're tame. So when we pour the water the first time, so that makes the hand no longer tame. However, the water that's on your hands now, right? You just poured water on your hands. So your hand is not tame anymore, but the water that's still on your hands is now tame. So what do you need to do? So you need to pour water again on your hands, and that's going to get rid of the water, which is tame, that's on your hands. So I hope that made sense, right? The first pour gets rid of the tameness of your actual hands, makes them no longer tame, and the second pour gets rid of the water that now had become tame from touching your hands that were tame. Right? The first water on your hands became tame, and the second water gets rid of that tame, and now your hands are totally good, right? And you're totally tar. So what's the problem though? Is that let's say you're washing your hands, And so you're washing up to your fingers, right? Because there's wait, do you need to wash up to your fingers? You need to wash up to your wrists. So we'll get back to that. But let's say you're washing up to your fingers. So let's say you wash up to your fingers with your first pour, right? And then your hands, and then you're going to your second pour, and some water falls back, right, and touches the back of your hand past the fingers. Okay, so now that that water, right, that water which was tame, now makes this part of the hand tame. So now if I pour water on it, that's not going to get rid of the tumminess from that hand. It's a very that the status of the water, it's very confusing, but the status of the water that became tummy from your first pour is like this in between, like this in between status. My Chavrusa was he had like he kept trying to explain it with the flow that you have to know the direction of the flowing, that once that it has like that if it became tame from the actual hands, then it can only become, right. It's not really, it's a little bit tummy, but it's not so tummy because it can become tar from the second water. But once that water touches something else, now that turns to something that turns to something that it touches into tame on a first level, right? So let's. I think it's the best way to explain it. I don't think I'm explaining so well, but I think this is the easiest way to understand it. That you pour your hands, you pour water over your hands one time, right? So now that you have water on your fingers. So let's say I take my hand and I touch let's say I touch my head, right? So now my head, right? My let's say I touch my hair. So my hair now has the water, right? The water was tame because it got the tame from my hands. And now my hair becomes tame because I took that water and I touched my hair. Okay. So now if I were to, let's say I washed my hands, let's say I washed my hands, right? But then I were to touch my hair again, right? Touch that water that's on my hair again. So that water, which is tame, will make my hands tame once again, right? Because it made my hair tame. That's basically how it works. I don't know if it's making so much sense, but because of that, we have this halacha as a result, this interesting halacha that you're supposed to basically point your hands down this way so the water doesn't roll back. Okay, so that's the actual halacha. But if that didn't make any sense, then you really don't need to worry because there's two things that you need to know which basically make this halacha not so relevant. The number one, this only applies basically this idea of it rolling back and making the rest of your hand tamei again. That only applies if you wash only up to your knuckles. But if you wash all the way up to your wrist, so the Mishnah Berurah explains, even if the water would drip onto your arm and then drip back onto your hand, you wouldn't need to worry about it because it's only halacha as it relates to the hand. So that's number one. But what's more important is number two, and this is the most important thing to know, is that if you washed your hands with a revius of water, how much is a revius? So I think we said in the past that it's like 3.6 fluid ounces. I don't know. We maybe we'll look up the exact amount, but revius is not so much. It's really not so much. So if you take a standard washing cup, you should have well over a revius. You should have lots of revius in a regular washing cup. So if you obviously the more water the better, but every washing cup pretty much should have a revius. So, but if you pour a revius of water on your hands, so that's just as strong as going over one and going over two. That's actually the most strong thing you could do, and that's basically the status of a mikvah waters. That it totally makes your hand pure, right? It doesn't have this hard to understand rule where it's kind of tame if it rolls back, and you need a second water to get rid of the tameness, right? Revius basically saves you, makes your life so much easier. You don't need to really know anything, and that's at the end of the day. Like the biggest takeaway is, okay, if I wash my hands with the revius, then I'm totally good. If I wash my hands with enough water, I'm fine. I can do it. So that's so that's the that's the basic halacha. Do you have any questions on that? Because I'm sure sure it was a little confusing. But
Okay, I have a quick question. If you're standing by the sink, can you show us how the hands should be in relation? Are they elevated or are they
yeah,
just?
no, so no, so the way the Shulchan Aruch explains what to do is to basically to wash your hands to wash your hands and then lean your hands forward, like pointing like that, right? So that the water would drip down that way. Oh, but there is something to something else, which is very important. Two things. So number one, the Mishnah Brura quotes. He says, when you think about it, it's actually impossible to do this unless someone else is washing your hands. Because, like, let's say you washed your hand, right? Let's say I washed my right hand first,
Mhm.
okay? And then I went to go take the cup to wash my second hand. So when I'm taking the cup, the water is going to roll back down on my hand this way. It's not going to roll off the front. It's going to roll back down. This is never
Mhm.
going to work. It's only going to work if someone washes your hands. So the whole thing, he says, don't worry about it. Just use your revius and you're totally fine. You can forget the whole thing. So that's what Mishnah Berurah says. But they quote on the side. They quote from the Deer Shoe. They quote the Aruch HaShulchan, and he says our practice, our minhag. He says some people still like to do it. It's like a kabbalistic thing. They still like to raise their hands or raise their hands up like that. Let the water drip off after they wash their hands. But do you really need to do it? Not really. If you want to, if you want to follow this practice, if it's meaningful to you, then you could do it. So that's I think the thing to be aware. But if you want to know what it looks like, I think if I'm understanding it right, it looks like this. Like you basically wash your hands, you go like this, you say the bracha, you go like this, and then you dry it. That's pretty much what it is. Um, okay,
Thank
good.
you.
Okay, so good. So how many times at the end of the day, right? So I just told you a lot of very confusing stuff. So you want to know, okay, just tell me how many times do I need to wash my hands? Do I need to wash my hands 2 times, 1 time, 3 times? Okay, so Mishnah Berurah quotes from the Yadayim that even though right, I told you Revius is basically like a superpower. If you pour with enough water on your hands, that equals two, right? So maybe it should just be enough for two. So the Mishnah Berurah quotes from the Yadayim that he says that yeah, basically you should even though one is enough, you should be two. That's the minhag. You just want to be careful about it. Do 2 times. But the Chazon Ish had the practice. He just said, no, a revis is enough. So I'm just going to wash with one. I'm going to do one pour on my hand with a lot of water, and one pour on my other hand with a lot of water, and I'm totally good. So I think most people do 2 times, and I have seen people do 3 times, and I think that's based on two things. That one, the Shulchan Aruch quotes an idea that let's say you have something on your hand, right? So if you had something on your hand, then the first water, right, wouldn't actually even make your hand tahor in the first place. It would just serve to get rid of the thing on your hand. And then you would need a one and a two. So that would equal 3 times. And also, there's they quote from also another Kabbalistic practice to from the Arizal to wash 3 times. Um, so that's where I think you'll find some people who do wash their hands 3 times, right? One, right, 1, 2, 3, right. By the way, very important that when I'm saying wash your hands twice or 3 times, it's like it's not one, 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 one. It's 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. And that's not like how people wash in the morning. It's different. That when people wash in the morning, they do, right? This is not for eating bread, just for getting up in the morning. So when you wash in the morning, it's for a different reason. To get rid of they call ruach ra, like evil, basically evil spirit. So because that's like a totally separate halacha. It's not like as a remembrance for this idea of tuma and tahara that the kohanim had to wash their hands. So what people do there is you do 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 back and forth. But for washing for bread, right? Because the whole thing is that you need to get first you get rid of make your first you pour once to make your hands tar, and then you pour again to get the water tahor, or you're just doing one revius at once, right? Or some people you're just doing two, even though it's a revius both times. You're just doing that to be safe, right? That's just, but it's in a row. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 1, 2. So that's very important to know. Also, right, what would happen is that, let's say you wash one of your hands, right? You wash one of your hands. Let's say you did it with a revius, and then you touched your other hand. So now your other hand isn't tahor yet, right? Your this hand you haven't washed, and this hand you have washed. So this hand is tamei. This hand, which is bad, right? Impure. This hand is tahor and it's pure. So this hand is clean. But let's say you touch this hand. So now this hand would go back to being tamei again. You don't want that. So that's also why it's important to wash 1, 2 like that, right? Because until you do technically, right, if you're not doing your revius until you do the second pour, it's not actually tahor. Or even if it's already tahor, even if you did do revius, if you touch it, then it would make it go back to its original state, which is tamei, which is impure. So that's why they quote that it's important to, not touch your hands in between. And even when you're passing the handle, the cup from one hand to the other, you should make sure to try to not touch the other hand, because that would make it pure. So they quote this I'll quote. I last we'll see what my father says, that the Ramah, who's on the Shulchan Aruch, basically the Ashkenazi posek, he says that after you wash your hands, before you dry your hands, he quotes this idea to rub your hands, call it a shifshuf. And he says, and the Mishnah Berurah says that why should you do it? You should just be very careful to remove all the dirt. It's just this extra thing. But the Mishnah Berurah says that if you don't do this thing, rubbing your hands, it's okay. But they quote on the side that from the Bach that the minhag is to do it. But I've never seen anyone ever do this, that basically to wash your hands, and before they dry their hands, to rub your hands together. And I don't know, but have you heard it? Have you seen anyone who does that?
I don't look too closely, but I've never seen it.
Okay, so if we've never seen it, then I don't know, but it does say it, so I'll try to find out about that, see if anyone actually does it nowadays. But it does say to do that. But personally, I think I haven't been rubbing my hands together, even though I saw it, until someone tells me that, yeah, that really is the correct practice. But it could be we're just not sure, and it could be really that we're supposed to be doing it. But anyways, the Mishnah Berurah says that even someone who doesn't do it, it would still be okay. Your washing still okay. So this what I thought was very interesting. That So I just told you, right, there's a lot of confusing halachos about washing your hands. And also, one of the things I said is that we discussed is that the water that you pour on your hands, right, if you'd only pour it once on your hands, and you pour with very little amount of water, so that water would actually be tamei, right? And if I touched my head, right, that water would be tamei. It would make it would make my hands become tamei again. So first of all, very important thing to know is that once you make the bracha, and once you make your bracha and you dry your hands, so if you would touch something else, right? Let's say you would touch someone who hadn't washed their hands, you touch them on the hand, so it's okay. You wouldn't need to wash your hands, right? Once you're already finished washing your hands, right? If you touch something that or someone who is not yet become tahor, that's okay. You're in the middle of eating, right? It's fine. It's no problem. Don't worry about that. But the question that they quoted inside is that, let's say, right, everyone's in line to wash their hands, right? We're at or maybe we're at a restaurant, right? And there's a lot of people who use the same washing cup, and they even use the same towel to dry their hands. So, okay, what if I'm in line and the guy in front of me, and I know, or there's a bunch of people in this restaurant who don't really know this halacha, and maybe they poured water on their hands with a very small amount, very little bit, right? And they didn't do it twice. And they didn't, right? They didn't get to Revius, and they only did on their fingers, right? So basically, it was hard to do, but somehow they did it. They made it so that it's the worst of the worst, and they made it so that this water is actually tame water. And if that water would touch the towel, let's say, so now the towel should be tame, right? And so then if I would wash my hands correctly, I did everything right, and I dry my hands on the towel, maybe that should make my hands become tame again in the first place, right? And go back to what they originally were. So the Chazon Ish has a he has a chiddush. He gives you way out. He says no. If they did the washing so badly, it's as if the water was never right, as if that water never even became tamei in the first place because their washing wasn't even a real washing. It's a little bit of a chiddush, but he says basically you don't need to worry about it. The Shevet Levi kind of disagrees, but then he also helps us out. The Shevet Levi says no, that's not true. If really they wash like that, it would be a problem. And if you dry your hands on that towel, it would be bad. But he says you don't need to worry about it because almost everyone nowadays, you wash your hands with a revius of water, right? With the amount of water, the correct amount, so that even if you pour it once, it's no problem. So basically, you're not going to have to worry about this. Everyone who washes their hands, the water isn't actually going to become tame as a result. Finally, the last thing we'll discuss is the bandages. That the way this came up is because let's say you'd wash your hands with a little bit of water, and then that water would go onto the bandage, and then let's say that water which is on the bandage went back to your hands again, right? So again, this isn't really going to be a problem for us because we're going to wash our hands. We're going to be very careful about washing our hands with the VSF water, with the correct amount of water. But that's why the bandages came up again. So just some extra notes on bandages from what we discussed last week. That the Chazon Ish says that let's say you had a bandage on your hand and you didn't wash that part of your hand, like we discussed last week. You don't need to wash your hands, but he says that really you should try to maybe use like a napkin on your hand. Right, there's a famous halacha. Let's say you don't have water. People like to quote this. So if you don't have water, what should you do? That you could use a napkin in your hands, and maybe you could touch the bread that way. So we haven't really so much discussed that yet, but he says that if that was the case, if this is our case here in regard to the bandage, so you should put the napkin over the bandage, so at least you have that. And they quote from Rosh Zalman. I think this is a question that we discussed. That let's say their entire hand was covered in a cast. So what should they do? So he says that you should do two things. Number one, use a napkin, put the napkin in that hand, but don't wash that hand. So you should only wash one hand. And he says you can say a bracha. He says you can even say a bracha on washing your hands like that. And he says, which is a nice chiddush, he says, what bracha should you say? Right? What's the bracha that we say when we wash your hands? Al Netilat Yadayim, on washing hands in plural. But here you're only washing one hand, right? Because you have the cast on your left hand. You're only washing your right hand. So how could I say Netilas Yadayim? Because yeah, you could still say Netilas Yadayim in the plural because that's the nosach. That's the bracha that's the way the Chazal formulated the bracha. Even if it's just one hand, you can say Al Netilas Yadayim. Okay, so that's this week's shir. If anyone's any questions, feel free to ask. And next week I think we will be continuing.